All right, guys, welcome. Nice to have you guys. We're going to be talking tonight about strength. Last time we talked about cardio, which maybe you watched that video and got some more like indicators of how to train in zone 1, 2 training, that kind of stuff, utilizing heart rate monitors, and then also knowing how long you should do it, how hard, that kind of stuff. Tonight we're doing the same thing, only we're focusing on strength training and kind of the what's the best way to do it, how long, how hard, in order to build strength. You guys who have done, all of you in this room and all my clients watching have done the InBody scale. So you know that one of the markers on the InBody scale is skeletal muscle mass, SMM. Skeletal muscle mass that's what it is, it's mass. That's the weight of your muscles in pounds. Different from when we talk about strength, like how strong you are. So mass has nothing to do with strength. There is a correlation, but how we measure strength is different than how we measure mass. So you guys know tonight that you've already been measured for your muscle mass, and you know whether that's underweight, average, or overweight. Now, when I say overweight, that's a good thing when it comes to muscle mass. Or average, good job. Underweight is a condition called sarcopenia. And sarcopenia is the disease of aging when it comes to reduction of muscle mass due to aging. And after the age of 35, we typically lose about 1 pound of muscle mass per year if we don't do anything about it. So we could have quite a bit of muscle mass when we're younger, but it's really common to lose up to 1 pound of muscle mass every year after the age of 35. The point is, you got to do something to prevent it from being lost, right? And it's actually being shown that it's not just muscle mass is being lost, but at a 2 times greater rate than muscle mass being lost is your actual like speed of contraction of the muscle and how fast you can actually move. So like when we look at speed and agility and power of the muscle, not just how much it weighs, but the functional part of why we need muscle is to move us, to mobilize us, to get upstairs. Or if I'm walking and I trip, how fast can I move my right foot around fast enough to catch myself, or you know, like boop, boop, catch myself quickly so that I don't continue to fall and break a hip as we age. So we lose that part of our muscle at a rate like 2 times faster than the actual mass itself. And so that's the thing to be thinking about when we're looking at increasing strength of the muscle, also increasing muscle power, endurance, speed, and agility too. And so no matter what your age, to really be thinking about, I've got to actually train specifically for that too. And so that's where some of your high intensity interval training, foot speed training, and stuff like that can become really beneficial, along with push-pull type dumbbell workouts that we think of traditionally as our strength training type exercises. So I wanted to kind of start off tonight talking about how a couple fun facts. So research shows that by increasing muscular training, or like by doing muscular training, we increase our resting metabolic rate by 8 to 9% for up to 3 days for every 1 bout of muscular training exercise. So you go to the gym, you work out, you get a bump of 8 to 9% in your resting metabolic rate for 3 days after. It's a pretty good trade-off, right? It's 2 to 3 days a week is what the American Academy of Sports Medicine recommends for the average adult is our frequency of training, is to go lift some weights 2 to 3 days a week. And so if we can do that, we're going to be in good shape for the rest of our lives. But there's a caveat to that, because it depends on what you do when you're there. Okay, so and how much you overload the muscle and what your particular training regimen looks like. And then of course factoring in potential knee injuries and hip injuries and whatever your ailments might be, and working around that so that you're still working certain parts of the muscles, but maybe not all, in order to create some muscle strength. Tonight we're going to be testing your hand dynamometer strength. So we're going to be doing a strength test on you. It's the easiest non-invasive test for strength training there is out there. And this correlates to full body strength. So if your hand dynamometer strength is not great, full body strength is probably suffering too. And so we're going to be able to look tonight at your grip rating for females, and we'll be able to tell you, are you normal? Are you strong? Like, are you over and above where you need to be, or are you weak, they call it. And so I'm going to talk to you guys tonight about mostly hand grip strength for a long time, because this is one of now like an independent factor for all-cause mortality. When they're talking about reduced hand grip strength, actually has a direct correlation to all-cause mortality. I'm going to talk to you tonight about all the comorbidities associated with low hand grip strength. So it's really fascinating to me that we can do one test non-invasively and really get a good indicator of where we're at with regards to like type 2 diabetes or risk factor for all sorts of things. So we'll go into that tonight as well. But let's stick to just strength training for a second and like what you actually need to do in order to get stronger, because there's a difference between getting stronger in the gym and building mass in the gym. So you've seen like bodybuilders who build big old massive muscles, and then people who just, look really athletic and lean, but they're strong as heck, right? So you know the types. You've seen the different types of people, and that's because they're training specifically for that body type. And so we're going to talk about what's best for us. It's just the general population who doesn't want to be bulky. We don't want to train for hulking muscles, but we want to train for functional strength, okay? So functional strength for us is approximately, like I said, 2 to 3 days a week. But then if we add to what we do in the gym, we're going to be working out between 8 and 12 repetitions per thing we pick up. So let's say I'm doing bicep curls, for example. I need to do 8 to 12 repetitions of just bicep curls. Now, then I go to the next thing, 8 to 12. So when you're thinking every exercise that you do for strength training, it has to be between 8 and 12 reps in order to build for strength. Because remember I said there's different ways to build for bulk. There's ways to build for strength. There's ways to build for endurance in the muscle. 8 to 12 is that sweet spot for building strength. Okay, so when you're thinking about, you're choosing like, am I going to do 8 or I'm going to do 12 on this one? It really is, the closer you get to 12, the more you're building for endurance in that muscle group. The closer you get to 8, the more you're building for strength and maybe a little closer to mass too. Okay, so the lower the reps, the more you're building for mass, bulk, right? Which would be more like a 3 to 5 rep range. So 8 still on the higher end of that. The closer we are to 12 to 15 to 20 reps, the more we're building for more endurance. So it's up to you what you choose, but somewhere between 8 and 12 is your sweet spot. Let's say you choose 8. Okay, now there's an example. I'm going to throw out just 8 reps, and you choose to do bicep curls. It's easy to think about. We're doing our bicep curls, and we've chosen a weight that we think is appropriate for our 8 reps. How do we know that that's an appropriate weight for our 8 reps? The way to know is that by the 8th one, you can barely do it. So you're like, 6, 7, and then 8.
For strength, you said?
Yeah, just for any rep you do. So let's say you're building for mass and you're doing 3 to 5 reps. You want the 5th one to be really hard, right? If you're building for strength, 8 to 12 reps, whether you choose 8 reps or 12, if you choose 12, your weight has to be smaller, right, in order to get those 12 in, but the 12th one still has to be really hard. Like you could barely do it. Okay, so whatever rep range you choose, the last one needs to be difficult to achieve and finish. Yeah, or that's when you know you pick the right weight. So, yeah, you might go to the rack and go, oh, 10 pounds, that looks easy. I mean, that looks like the right size for me. You start doing it, the 8th one is like, oh, okay.
Right.
Nope, not doing a thing. Might as well just do 20 and make it an endurance workout, right? So you have to find the weight that's challenging for you on the last rep between 8 and 12 reps, okay? So if by the 8th one you're challenged, that's approximately 80% of your 1 repetition max. So 1 repetition max is if I were to just do 1 bicep curl, what weight would I put in my hands and only be able to do 1? Let's say it's 50 pounds. Well, what's 80% of 50 pounds is typically the weight you can do 8 times. Okay, that's just for easy math. Did that make sense? You pick one, like you don't have to even do a 1 rep max. I'm just saying that it's approximately 80% of your 1 repetition max. Just choose a weight and trial it out. Your first round around the gym, you're like, I don't even know. I'm just going to stick the pin in right here and just see. And you're doing your lat pull downs, and by the 8th one, it's too easy. Well, then, of course, your second time around, you better bump up the weight pretty good because you need to now see, is this the right one? And then that's when you need to document where you're at if you're going to go back to the gym and do the same thing the next day, or not the next day necessarily, but a couple days later, and go, okay, well, I remember that I put the pin right in here at 35 pounds. So the app you guys all have has the ability to track your reps and your weight for each exercise that you have in there. Now, if you're doing upwards of 12 reps, like higher rep range, then it's about 70% of your 1 rep max. So if you're ever doing the math and you really want to know what your 1 rep max is, it's about 70% of that if you're going to do more reps. Okay, if you do between 8 and 12 reps, this is the perfect rep range for putting you into an anaerobic or without oxygen state to actually induce a period of growth within the muscle and strength within the muscle. So it's the studied perfect rep range for that. All of you guys should be building for strength, so that's just hands down where you need to be. I'm not going to tell you do anything different, because if you do less weight, you may not be challenging yourself enough to build for strength, right? You're just doing endurance. And if you do more, you're putting yourself at risk for injury, right? So it's not worth it. Okay. So let's say you start to build strength and you're feeling stronger each time, not necessarily each time you go to the gym, but you're progressively getting stronger over a couple weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks time, you're going to want to bump up your weight about 5% each time you go to that next range. So let's say you do the 35 pounds on that pin for the lat pull down for several weeks. You should really try and keep progressively overloading yourself. Even if you can only get to 7 reps, you're eventually going to get to 8 on that new 5% incremental increase. So don't allow yourself to stay at the same place for too long before you start playing around with new goals at the gym. Okay, so let's see. So just to reiterate, 2 physiological adaptations occur when we work out, when we strength train. We get stronger and we can build for mass. Now, some of you, not necessarily those of you in the room, but some of you have to train for mass because you don't have enough. But there's a lot that factors into why you can't build mass, and that's low protein diet, and you're not doing the appropriate amount of overload on the strength training. Okay, you're just doing, it's too easy. Or you don't have the hormones anymore, like testosterone. The older you get too, the harder it is to build mass. So it's best to do it younger. And if you haven't worked out in a long time, it's not too late to start. The body will start to physiologically adapt to increasing both strength and mass. After just a couple weeks, your motor learning units in the nerves start to come on board, and that strength increase is mostly due in the first couple weeks to a neurological adaptation. So the brain-body connection is going, oh, I'm needed here. So you might feel stronger without actually having gained a physiological new strength gains. It's all neurological so far. But after a few weeks, after even several weeks, it takes about 120 total days for muscle tissue to completely turn over in the body. So think 6 months is how long it takes for muscle to completely cellularly die off and regenerate in the body. So we have all new muscles every 6 months. So when you're thinking, I'm not getting anywhere at the gym, and it's only been 2 weeks, okay, slow it down, because it's going to take about 6 months to actually see good physiological adaptation to what you're doing, but you need to be consistent. Here's the other sad thing. You know how if you stop eating well, you know, you stop eating good and you go back to high sugar diet or whatever, you can gain weight back pretty easily, right? It's harder to lose it than it is to gain it. It's the exact same thing with our muscles. In fact, a study that came out in this book published this study. This is my Foundations for Exercise Professionals book. So they made mention in here about detraining. It says 4 weeks of detraining, so just 4 weeks, 2/3 of the favorable muscle strength gained that had been gained during the 13 weeks of muscle training are all abolished after 4 weeks of detraining. So you do 13 weeks of training, you've gained some muscle mass and strength, you take 4 weeks off, 2/3 of that is gone. Yikes, right? So what we start, we need to continue to maintain for life. This is a lifestyle. It's not something you can do for a little bit and say, hey, I worked out 1 month last year and it's gonna, yeah, I'm good. No, it's a lifelong habit.
How much we lose from 4 weeks?
So after 2/3 of the favorable muscle gains after 4 weeks of detraining. If you worked out consistently for 13 weeks, you lose 2/3 of it after 4 weeks of detraining. Crazy. So, you know what's interesting is they still don't really understand what happens to the muscle and why it gets bigger. Like why muscle actually gets hypertrophied or bigger. Like you see big muscular guys and you're like, what is actually going on there? A couple theories are that there's more water now being attracted to the muscle fiber and it grows because of extra water. And then another theory is there's more contractile units being created. And all those things are true, but they don't really truly know what causes an increase in muscle mass. But what we can do is just continue to do what we're doing. We feel the increase in strength. We feel stronger. We can have measurable outcomes for increase in strength. And then we also know based on just our ability to live our lives functionally, being able to get out of a chair, being able to get off the ground, out of bed. All these things we know feel better when we do these things, so we don't necessarily need to know the physiology and exact everything that's going on. Do you guys have any questions so far about what we've talked about with regards to being at the gym and what to do? Got a question? Diane. No.
I'm not doing the gym. I mean, I'm not to that point. So what do you do if you're not to that point of going to the gym yet?
Okay. So, great question if you're in physical therapy or you have injuries and things like that. So you can use like a upper body ergometer. If your lower body is the one that hurts, you can use an upper body cycling ergometer, which moves the upper body like a bicycle, only for the upper body, and you can increase the resistance on that to really get the movement going. You can do upper body strength training workouts to just completely take out the lower body. And then with regards to knees, right, we can do straight leg hip training workouts to completely bypass the knees. We could do band strengthening workouts. You can do, we're going to talk about this later, but grip strength workouts where you're doing like a farmer's carry where you actually hold a dumbbell next to you and just walk on one side or both to work on grip strength and like increasing or putting on a rucksack or like a backpack with 10-pound weight on it is going to make it harder when you just walk, increase your cardiovascular endurance that way, but also build strength in your calves. You can do calf raises, right? Or do things that, you know, that are not going to hurt you and that you absolutely can run these things by your physical therapist. But getting your physical therapist on board with helping you strength train at the gym beyond your physical limitations. So I would say get them involved. I'm happy to help you with some of that too and talk about that and go, okay, let's create a training program specific to your needs and we can upload that into your app. Okay. I say is you can always do core strengthening too. And so we can be creative on core. Now core is a little bit harder to do like 8 to 12 reps on. You're typically doing for time, or you're doing higher repetition range because you're working more on cardiovascular endurance, like planks or crunches and things like that. When you think about the large movers of the body, like the long muscles, biceps, triceps, quads, hamstrings, calves, the back muscles, and the abs, those we can work on the 8 to 12 reps at a higher weight. Maybe the abs in the back might be a little more difficult to do at the gym that way, but everything else we can easily figure out, like, okay, I can do squat press on the squat press at the gym and count 8 to 12 reps there. I can do calf raises or bicep curl, tricep extension, a push, a pull, a row pull, lat pull downs. There's 5 exercises on 5 core exercises you can do at the gym that if you want to get the whole body pretty much involved, then these 5 will do it. And it's the leg press. It's going to be the chest press. So these are all machine weights. Leg press, chest press, the lat pull down, the row, and the shoulder press. So we're talking chest press, shoulder press, lat pull down where you're pulling. You've got the row. So this now all upper body's done. And now the squat movement with the legs is going to get everything else. Okay. Not necessarily going to involve the core at all. So while you're doing those, you do have to be cognizant to pull your belly button in. And like when you pull that belly button in, you're activating the core while you're doing all those. So then, yes, it can be a core exercise. You just have to be like thinking about it.
Yeah, because they have me do that in physical therapy.
Yep. Activate the core. Yep. Activate the core. Yep. Good. In Peter Attia's book Outlive, he talks about the centurion decathlon, which is how we have to think about getting older and what can we do now that even 20 years from now we want to continue to do, be able to do. So he's just talking about, for example, like if you want to be lifting a baby as a grandchild, if you can't lift a 30-pound kettlebell now off the ground, will you be able to even lift your grandchild down the road, right? So just like thinking about what can we do now? If we can't even do that now, what in 10, 15, 20 years, if I don't do anything about it, I'm going to be even worse, right? Because we know we lose a lot of muscle with every year that we age. But in here, he talks about 4 things that are really important when it comes to strength. And number 1 is grip strength. His number 1 is grip strength. So you think about it, if we are about to go down some stairs, what do we hold on to? We grip something, right? Or if we're going to fall, or we grip or grab something. We're oftentimes pushing something or pulling something, right, in functional daily life. I'm grabbing onto things all the time, or I'm opening a jar. I'm, doing things in my kitchen, holding a knife and pressing down, cutting things, that kind of stuff. So you think about like even bringing the garbage out to the street, you're gripping and pulling something. So he says number 1 is training for grip strength. So we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. Number 2 is concentric and eccentric motion. So you're like, what the heck is that? Concentric is, let's just use our bicep curl for an example. Concentric motion is when I bring the bicep into a curled state at the same time, or a shortened state at the same time I'm contracting. That's all that means. Eccentric is the opposite of that. I'm extending while I'm contracting. And that's 2 ways to contract the muscle. I'm either contracting while I'm shortening, or I'm contracting while I'm lengthening. So concentric, eccentric. If I train for both, I'm training the muscle to be even stronger. Eccentric contractions are the ones that cause the most delayed onset muscle soreness because it causes the most muscle tearing. So if we train for our power and agility and speed training, we're training more eccentrically. And that's good for lifelong health of the muscle. He also said pulling motion. So training for pulling, like a lat pull down or a row. Those are both pulling motions. So if you do those 5 ones at the gym, you're getting 2 good pulling exercises. And those involve the back, the biceps, the triceps, the shoulders, the chest, everything. So it's a really good way to do that. If you don't have a gym membership, you could do a lat pull down with a band, put up like in a somewhere in your house if you want to do a pulley system or something like that, or just practice with pulling something that's typically in your house. You could grab a dumbbell and bend over and do your bend over rows and pull that way. The last one you mentioned is hip hinging movement. So you think about like hinging at the waist. Okay, we hinge a lot at the waist, and we do a lot of it with a single leg. So as you're training and thinking about your training regimen at the gym, you're actually incorporating single leg movement, double leg movement. So like a deadlift would be a really great hip hinging exercise. So we're bending over at the waist with our dumbbells and coming back up.
So Romanian.
Yeah.
Romanian.
You can, sometimes they call it Romanian deadlift or just plain old deadlift.
Suitcase.
Suitcase lift, was that?
Side.
So you're carrying it on the sides?
Yeah, but you're lifting from.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Depending on how like if your deadlift is from the ground and you're bringing the weight from the ground up, that's, it's called a deadlift.
Okay.
But the deadlift I'm thinking of is a hip hinging.
Okay.
Legs are straight, back is flat, like you're arched here, chest is poked out, and my legs are not bent. So I'm hinging here and then squeezing the buns at the top
Okay.
and really activating the glutes. And that's activating that low back strength. The important thing is not to do this when you do it, or you're gonna hurt yourself. Especially if you have a lot of weight in the front of you. Okay, so just a good hip hinge, or you're doing let's say you're doing a single leg hip hinge. You have something here to hold on to. You want to make it harder? Just have it there, but don't hold on to it, and do it slower. And then come up. Yeah. So you're like training for balance too. Balance is so important to train for, along with that speed, agility, and power. I could do a whole talk on just that, on balance, and why we need to do it. Let's see. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say about kind of how we do strength training, what we should be doing. So grip strength, we need to be doing our push-pull exercises, mainly pulling, concentric, eccentric muscle loading, which you're already going to be doing if you're lifting weights. So you don't have to worry about that one. Am I doing concentric, eccentric? Yes, you are. I will say though that you'll be doing more concentric and eccentric if you have a weight in your hand that's unattached to a machine, because you have to control that weight down easier. Like you are going to push something and pull something down. But think about like if I have a shoulder press, right? I'm pushing it up, and it's hard to push it up, but coming down is a lot easier with a machine. It almost like catches itself before you're ready to have it catch it. Whereas if you just push up 2 dumbbells, you have to control that coming down from doing this, right? Going side to side. And the weight of it coming down has to be controlled. So that in and of itself makes it a much harder exercise than doing a machine weight. But if you're just starting out and you've never worked out and never strength trained before, you should probably start out on the machines, because they're a lot safer than the free weights. Okay, let's talk about the grip strength. This is kind of fun. So I'm going to have you guys, while I'm talking to you, what your grip strength is. So I'm going to show you guys how to do it. So we're going to power this one on. I'm going to reset it. Okay, so it should say 0, 0 at the top, max pounds. I'm going to have my elbow by my side. Okay, my 90-degree angle created by my arm. Yep, just like that. Okay, so you're going to sit up straight. all of us should be about the same distance.
Sorry,
here.
I don't understand.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so all 4 fingers should, like my flats of my fingers should be facing forward. If I was like this, that'd be wrong. Okay, so if you guys have tiny hands, let me know. And I can adjust this for you. Down 1 more. Doubt you need to go out 3, but we're going to probably all be the same. So this is resting in this middle of my palm. Okay, I'm going to delete it, get it back to zeros. Okay, when I'm ready, you're going to just squeeze as hard as you can, and you're going to hold that squeeze for about 3 to 5 seconds. Okay.
With your right hand.
With my dominant hand,
Okay.
but you can do both. Do both. So what I want you guys to do is look at the max pounds and write that down. So my test max pounds was 68.4, right, for this first test. So maybe on your little sheet there, go right hand, first attempt, second, and third. You guys are going to pass this around because you need about a minute break between each. So if I'm doing my right hand again under a minute, that's not right. So Christy, you then pass it to Diane after you've done your right and left the first time. She'll do her right and left, and then Sandy right, left. Go back to Christy for right, left again. Make sure you have at least a minute between tests on each hand, and then hit the delete button in between each test. Get it back to zeros. Okay. Write down your first, second, and third attempt on each side, and then we'll compare it against the normative data. Okay. So what I'd like to do is start adding this to our testing when you come in for your in-body, because this is becoming such a interesting hot topic of study. Like this journal of health, population, and nutrition came out in 2024, and it was published in January. Hand grip strength as a proposed new vital sign for health. And so they did a review of all studies done on hand grip strength, and then kind of compiled all the evidence into one thing, and they were proposing that doctors now use hand grip strength as a new vital sign. And you guys will see why in a minute, why that's kind of cool and important. Okay, so we're going to delete my results, give it to Christy. So I read through this article, and I'm going to highlight some of the most important things I think you guys would think would be interesting on hand grip strength. So hand grip strength serves as a fundamental metric for assessing muscle function and overall physical capability, and mainly is beneficial for the aging population. So I would say we're all fitting in that category. It's not going to be that beneficial for the youth, right? It's more beneficial for us. Okay. So I found this interesting. They've found that there's a correlation between low hand grip strength and type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, stroke, kidney issues, chronic kidney disease, liver disease, some cancers, sarcopenia, which we've talked about that's the disease of muscle wasting, and fragility fractures. The low hand strength grip is also associated with increased hospitalization, nutritional status, overall mortality, and quality of life. So there's a lot to this, and so there's ways to help it if you're not so great. So we'll see here in a little bit after you guys do your 3. Okay, so we know vital signs as pretty much blood pressure, pulse, temperature, respiratory rate, but sometimes doctors will even test blood oxygen saturation now. Grip strength ratings for females is measured in kilograms on this sheet, so I did the conversions to pounds for you already, but if you're curious, the conversion to pounds from kilograms is a multiplication of 2.2. So if you're like, oh, this says 71 kilograms, you multiply it by 2.2, and that's your poundage. Just to give you, I already did the calculation for you, but yeah. So you can just see what your age is on there, Christy. I found this to be really interesting because I've also read that the phase angle number that you guys get on your guys' in-body, you know the phase angle number that's in the bottom right-hand corner of your
Phase angle.
Yeah, it's like measured as 4.5 or 5.0. Phase angle is typically associated with poor nutritional status or diseases or increased amount of inflammation in the body. So having really good phase angle number typically decreases somebody's hospitalization. You guys have all had your phase angle tested. It's on your in-body sheet.
And should it be high?
It should be higher than 5.0. 5.0 or higher. But they're saying nutritional status, like when you go to the hospital, really makes a difference on whether or not you're going to get out of the hospital. Like how well you're going to fare with your mortality if you had to go to the hospital. Because if you have to lay in a bed for a long period of time, how much strength do you have to lose? Or mass even, right? So the more you have to lose, which is a good thing. So they're saying that the hand grip strength is actually a really good measure of whether or not you're going to get out of the hospital or not. And now they're using, like dietitians are using hand grip strength to determine nutritional interventions. So there's dietitians are shifting away from, okay, the weight of the person, saying, oh, you weigh 160 pounds, therefore we're going to feed you this way or that way. Now they're shifting, not all hospitals, but some dietitians are shifting to focusing on functional ability and strength, or lack thereof. So if there's low strength due to hand grip strength, then they might feed the person differently in the hospital based on that. Okay. I thought this was interesting too, that when we gain overall adipose tissue in our body, or we gain more fat on our body, specifically abdominal adiposity, like visceral fat, which is also measured on your in-body. And what this does is it influences pro-inflammatory markers. So we get an increase in pro-inflammatory markers due to that increase in visceral fat. This in turn exacerbates the infiltration of adipose matter into skeletal muscle and the myocytes, which is the cell of the muscle. So if, due to the fact that we're gaining more visceral fat can lead to more fat being laid down in muscle tissue, which that's not good. Muscle tissue, where there's fat in muscle tissue, makes us weaker. So they're showing a direct correlation between hand grip strength and obesity.
How do you get rid of that visceral fat?
Yeah, get rid of the visceral fat.
How do you?
Oh, how do you? Fasting really helps. De-stressing. You know, if you're really stressed, you're going to get more visceral fat because that's where a lot of your cortisol markers, or like cortisol receptors, reside, is in the visceral fat. Overall fat loss, though, with good exercise regimen and good eating, healthy eating and fasting, can reduce visceral fat overall.
So is it pretty normal to be stronger in the dominant
Yes.
than in the less
It's
dominant?
yes, it's more typical to be stronger in your dominant arm. Were you the opposite of that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I
I
was
wasn't
76.8 in my right and then 68.8 in my left.
Awesome.
So it was,
Good job. Those are great
Yeah.
numbers.
I know, I'm surprised just because of my arthritis,
Oh yeah.
all of
Good.
that, so.
Yeah, I'm surprised where I'm in the normal too for like my age. This goes
Good.
with our age, right?
Yeah. Awesome.
So yeah, I'm within that range up in the 50s, low
Yeah.
50s, but at least I was up there.
Good. That's great.
Yeah, and I've been in physical therapy for 10 weeks, so I can't lift any weights. So it stinks. So when you just said that, it made me want to cry.
Mm-hmm.
But they did say that you will bounce back
Yeah.
faster, but I don't know.
Yeah, not all ground is lost. You're right. The neurological adaptation that you've created over those weeks that you
Yeah.
were able to lift, it will come back. It doesn't take as long to make it come back, but it's just knowing if you don't do anything about it, that
Right.
4 weeks you lose the 2/3. Well, then let's say you don't ever go back. Well, yeah, you've lost all ground now.
Yeah.
So you don't have that intention. You're going to go back. You'll be fine.
And can nutrition help
Mm-hmm.
with that as well?
Yeah, so protein, of course, is the building block of all tissue of the human body, right? So amino acids are going to break down, and then specific amino acids build muscle cells. So that's why we have to have a full complement of complete amino acids when we eat, which is going to be found in eggs, meat, dairy, soy. Protein is a complete protein. It's just, we've talked about this with bioavailability, which ones actually absorb into your body and get utilized better than others. Soy protein is at the bottom of the barrel, whereas like eggs and whey are at the top, and then red meat kind of in third place, and then all your white meats and fish are right in the middle in terms of absorption. But they're all complete proteins, right? So you should be eating all of those things. It's just knowing that, some others are going to absorb better. Now, food intolerances aside, I think some people can't eat those foods, but you can eat maybe meat potentially. And then knowing that once those amino acids break down, barring also that we have healthy guts that can actually break down this food and absorb it. So there's a whole nother layer to that too. Do you have the proper enzymes to break it down? And if you're breaking it down and absorbing what percentage you can get out of that food to the best your body is capable, then you are going to build healthy muscles. If you aren't nutritionally absorbing, like maybe celiac, for example, those people, no hair, no cilia, or the little hairs that line the small intestine anymore, and they don't absorb their nutrition. And some people are just really starved that way, or they've had nutritional deficiency issues due to like disordered eating and various things that set them up for problems. But for the most part, if we are doing our job of eating a full complement of whole foods like fruits and vegetables, and we're going to feed the good healthy gut buddies, and they're going to thrive off that fiber, which is going to make our guts healthier ultimately, which is going to allow us to absorb more food ultimately nutritionally. So yeah, if our bodies sense we're starving, then we'll hold on to more fat too, which is, are we starving not because we aren't eating enough, but because we're not actually absorbing? So it's just it's an issue of not knowing or knowing your body and where you're at. Like, do you need to take micronutrients like vitamins to hopefully absorb that through under the tongue, right? Like a sublingual type vitamin or mineral, if you're not absorbing as well, until your body starts to heal a little bit more. So a couple more things about grip strength. So there's a direct correlation now with people with type 2 diabetes and low hand grip strength. And then the other things with cardiovascular disease, a combination of low skeletal muscle mass, which measured on your in-body, and hand grip strength was strongly associated with cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease, and peripheral artery disease, especially in those with higher A1C levels, which is an indication of diabetes. It says hand grip strength predicted major and total cardiovascular events. Kind of interesting, right? That there's this direct correlation there. It has even been used as a diagnostic and prognostic marker in congenital heart disease. So, oh yeah, this is really interesting. It says, a study of middle-aged and older German adults found men and women in the highest hand grip strength quintile at baseline. So if you guys tested in the strongest category, right? Like not just normal, but in the highest category, respectively, men had a 32% and women had a 25% lower risk for all-cause mortality compared to those in the lowest quartile. Pretty big difference in all-cause mortality.
What's that mean?
So if you test in the strongest category, then you have a 25% lower risk for women of all-cause death, basically. Death from all causes. I'm like, dang, that's a pretty high percentage. And based on our strength, you guys, that's how much our strength really means to our body. And I was reading in here also about, and I'll get to it, but about dementia and Alzheimer's risk. It's incredible, like what we could be doing to stave off that too. Here's a study, one study results showed that for every 5 kilogram decrease, or in this case, 2.2 times 5 is what, close, let's just say it's 10.2, right? It's 10.2 pounds. Am I right? Yeah. 5 kilograms is 10.2 pounds. So for every 10.2 pound decrease in hand grip strength, was associated with a 16% higher risk factor for all-cause mortality. So as you get older and you decline 10 pounds, let's say, in grip strength over a decade or less, I don't know, but you just increase that all-cause mortality by 16% for every 10 pounds. So it's important to not let yourself slip too far down if you have an injury. Like, you can still be working on grip strength using things as you lay in bed. You can be pumping your feet. You can, like, if you're really like bedridden, there are still some things you can do to work on strength. You can work on lifting the arms and things like that. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay, this is interesting too. So talking about frailty. So I know you work with older people and you're a caregiver. So we look at the Fried's, it's called Fried's, F-R-I-E-D, Fried's phenotype. Pheno, P-H-E-N-O-T-Y-P-E. Fried's phenotype is a measure of frailty. So if you have 3 or more of these markers, they're considered frail. Number one, that they've had unintentional weight loss. So if they say yes to that, that's a mark, we check. Do they have poor hand grip strength? So you guys just measured if they're in the lower quintile, right? Number 3, self-reported exhaustion. Slow walking speed. And I had to look this up. What did that mean? And how do you measure it? Okay, so according to Fried's phenotype, measuring slow walking speed is you measure out 13 feet. Like, you just find a long hallway or somewhere, you can measure from start to finish 13 feet, and you have a stopwatch, and you walk alongside the person as they go from start to finish 13 feet, and you start the stopwatch when they start, and you end the stopwatch when they end. So 13 feet is 4 meters approximately. Okay, so because the measurement is meters over seconds, so you need to do the conversion of the 13 feet to meters. Yeah, 4 meters is 13 feet.
Okay.
So you basically do the meters over seconds. You divide meters over seconds to determine the ratio. Anything above 0.9 meters per second is good. That's a good walking speed. I'm sure all of us fit into that good walking speed category, and anything below 0.8 meters per second is considered frail. So maybe you want to test your own family members. That, like, I could test my dad, right? Like, probably could guess that he's under that 0.8 without even testing. But anyways, I just thought that was interesting, that it's actually a marker we can test for. Slow walking speed. And then low physical activity. So self-reported low physical activity would be the 5th one. And if they have 3 or more, they're considered frail. And then, of course, frailty is associated with higher risk of hip fractures. And we know a hip fracture is going to lead to potentially more time in the hospital, which, if they already are low sarcopenic body type, they're most likely not going to make it out of the hospital very well, if at all. So that's not a great thing, right? Because hand grip strength is associated with chronic kidney disease, chronic liver disease like NAFLD, which is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, then increasing strength can actually help us overall kind of combat some of these major diseases. Cancers as well. Higher muscle strength at the start of chemotherapy is associated with significantly better overall survival in older patients with advanced cancer. So if they're about to go into chemotherapy, we get them on a strength training regimen, and they most likely have better outcomes in the end. So hand grip strength is just the way we test the strength, but we're talking overall strength. We're not just talking, let's work on your grip strength. We're talking, this is going to be head to toe, whatever they can do and they're capable of doing, that's what we're going to be doing. Okay, here's the psychological health and getting into the cognitive impairment piece that was really interesting. It says low hand grip strength, then the normative value, so the lower quintile of strength, are known to be linked with various psychological problems like cognitive impairment, poor mental health, and depression. And we already know that exercise helps people with depression, but now there's a correlation here. I mean, there has been for some time, but low strength is correlated with cognitive decline, including depression. This one was interesting. It says, while we know that hand grip strength levels are concurrently associated with cognitive decline, further, in a cross-sectional study of older men and women, those in the highest HGS quartile, or hand grip strength quartile, had 62 and 49% lower odds respectively. So for women, 49% lower odds for cognitive impairment compared to those in the lowest HGS quartile, or hand grip strength quartile. So you're really strong versus really weak, those double ends of the spectrum, right? Those are the ones in the highest quartile for strength, were 49% lower odds for cognitive impairment. That's a big difference. 50%.
What does that mean? 49% for what? Cognitive?
For women, for like mental, but also dementia and Alzheimer's, like kind of working toward that as you age. Yeah. This one was interesting too. It says, in addition, a study revealed for each 1 pound annual decline in hand grip strength was associated with a 9% increased risk for Alzheimer's. I'm like, so we want to keep the strength we have as we age. We don't want to decline at all. And how do we do that? We have to eat. And we have to continue to eat a high protein diet. It's not just for a small period of time while we're trying to lose fat. It's for the rest of our lives. And for the rest of our lives, we're continuing to exercise and treat ourselves. Because it's not necessarily about lifespan. It's about health span. I mean, I don't care if I live to 70 as long as I just do it well. Like I don't want to feel really old at 100. I want to be still, like, if I'm going to live that long, I want to have a good health span too, not just a good
Why don't
lifespan.
they teach us in school? That's so stupid.
I don't know.
People don't know this, and then they get older and they fight with you. You know what I'm saying? And you're like,
Yeah.
all these sick people in the hospital that just don't even know how to get better and don't want to get better.
Mm-mm.
Because they don't understand there is a way to get better.
They sit around in recliners. Like other countries don't even have recliners.
Yeah.
They sit crisscross applesauce at 80 years old and they're healthy.
Yeah.
But we don't know any of this. It's the first
Well,
time I've
other
heard any of
countries,
this.
yeah. So other countries may even be eating better quality food too. The way it's grown, the reduction of pesticides and herbicides and allowable toxins in the environment, that kind of stuff. So there's so much more to that than
Just this that you taught us. People should know.
yeah. And it's just, it mentions at the very end of this study, quality of life. We know that if we strength train and we exercise and eat right, our quality of life improves. And we just overall have a better outlook, right? So there's so many reasons to strength train beyond what we already knew. Now you guys know a little bit deeper reason into why it's important, and then how to measure ourselves so that we can easily, non-invasively, instead of taking you to the gym and saying, okay, do a bench press, I want to see what your 1 rep max is. That's obviously a strength test we can do, but it doesn't correlate in science because it's not reproducible. I can't get an elderly woman under a bench press and say, let's test your 1 rep max, but I can get her to grip something, right?
Yeah.
So that's why more studies are done on the dynamometer or hand grip strength than anything else. Yeah. Yeah. You guys have any other thoughts or want to talk about this and pass this
Very
around?
interesting. All your classes are
Thanks.
really informative.
Thank you. And this one at least you guys got to hear it this time. Yeah, I'll have this up and you guys can listen to it again if you want. So I know there's a lot.
Yeah.
You write down and just think about, I mean, you don't have to necessarily remember all these percentages and things like that. Just know that they're big, life-changing percentages if we work on our strength. And my machine can't measure your strength. This can. But my machine can measure mass, which they don't necessarily go hand in hand. just because you're gaining muscle mass doesn't mean you're getting stronger. So how you know you're getting stronger is either test yourself here or go to the gym and start upping the weights 5% every so often and be like, yeah, now that feels easy to me. Then you know you're getting stronger.
So increasing weight then will increase the strength.
Yeah.
Is the grip strength.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what if a person, let's say a person, they mainly just walk.
Mhm.
Does that give them, you know, what kind of strength does that give them if they're just walking?
None. That's
what I
not.
was wondering. 'Cause
Yeah.
my client can walk. She walks faster than me, but
Yeah.
she couldn't walk forever.
It's not a specific overload of a specific muscle group, right? It's
Right,
just
right.
is a considered cardiovascular exercise. So it's a
Right.
it's a totally different system of training. And yes, you do require muscles to walk,
Right.
and she's going to specifically train muscles to help her ambulate and walk, and that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just now get up off of a chair, get up off the ground, do other functional things. Is walking helping her do those things? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Walking is specifically helping her gain strength in the walking muscles, but not in functional movement muscles that we need for lifelong stability and functionality, like opening a can or like another really good test is it's what is it called? I'll have to remember the name of it. It's not really easy to do, but you try and get up off, you go down, you lay down, and you get a kettlebell and you have to come up first. And I think then you put your foot under you like this while you're lifting this overhead, and then stand up.
Wow.
And do that with some weight. That's another really hard thing, but can you do
could
that?
never do that.
Right?
I could before I got hurt.
Yeah.
I had a hard time just getting up.
Yeah, I can't get
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
the floor because of my knees. Both knees have been replaced. So
Yeah.
You can't kneel on them.
No, see, yeah. So,
That's the biggest thing is trying to get off a floor.
and the thing with knee replacements is you're not supposed to run. You can't do any hopping
No, I do
and
no
anything
running, no jumping.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the safest thing for you is just doing like a leg press
Yeah.
machine to get all the muscles involved. And so the more multiplanar you can get to, the more joint planes you can cross, the better. So if I'm just sitting and doing a quad extension machine, this, right? You all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's crossing one joint, right? One joint.
Is that good?
No, not as good as if I'm doing a leg press.
Oh.
Now I'm involving the hip and knee,
I don't have a leg press. I only have this thing.
which is fine.
Okay.
Know that now you've got to incorporate squats too, because you're not strengthening the hip
Gotcha.
with this. You're just doing one. So the more multiplanar you can get, the better. Then again, it involves more joints that might be injured. So you have to kind of think, well, do I just do a straight leg raise for you without, like, bypass the knee altogether, do a straight leg raise?
As long as I do it in the water, I'm great.
Yeah.
I can do it in the water like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of my exercise in the pool is.
Yeah.
And my physical therapy is my
Or-
legs.
Or calf raises.
Yep, we do all those in the pool, everything.
But let's say you're holding 2 dumbbells now.
Gotta give us those. Because they put pressure.
Yeah.
You use
Yeah.
the pressure in the water.
Yeah. Even outside the water, as you're
Yeah.
like just standing at home and holding on to the grip strength of something heavy, and your legs and hips are safe because you're just in a single plane and you just go up on your toes. It's not only going to challenge balance and stability; it's going to challenge the strength up your whole leg, and then from there, like a glute bridge, laying on your back and bridging up, glute bridge, maybe.
I can't do those.
Yeah.
I've tried them and I threw out my back yesterday, so I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, can't do those.